Alright, so today we're going to start the OSPI of the leg region. Before we start with each individual muscle, let's get an orientation of which is the medial and which is the lateral side. So as you can see, this is the big toe and this is the little toe. So this is going to be the medial aspect of the leg and this is going to be the lateral aspect of the leg. So in the leg we have three compartments: the anterior compartment, we have the lateral compartment, and then we have the posterior compartment. We're going to start with the anterior compartment. In the anterior compartment, you can see the four muscles that are present in the anterior compartment are the tibialis anterior. So this one here, as you can see, towards the medial side, this is the tendon of the tibialis anterior. If you take a look at this, you can see this is the superficial subcutaneous part of the tibia, which is the anterior border and the medial surface of the tibia, which I am showing here with my right hand. Just right next to that, in the anterior compartment, this muscle here is the tibialis anterior. So I'm going to, alright, so this one here, the one that I've separated with my thumb, this is the tendon of the tibialis anterior, right? So the tibialis anterior goes and gets inserted on the medial side into the navicular bone and into the first metatarsal bone, right? After that, we have the next tendon that you can see here is the tendon of the extensor digitorum longus muscle. Now this is the extensor digitorum longus, and as you can see very clearly, this then divides into four separate tendons which get inserted into the distal phalanges of the lateral four toes. Alright, so this is the extensor digitorum longus, and right next to that here, right, the one that I am pointing with my right hand here, this one is the tendon of the peroneus tertius muscle, which is another small muscle in the anterior compartment. Right, and then this tendon, this one here, is the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus, right? This is the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus, which is going to get inserted into the distal phalanx of the big toe, right? So you can see this is the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus. I don't know if you can actually trace it back, but this deep muscle here, this is the one in between the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus. This is the extensor hallucis longus, the one that I am pointing with my right thumb, right? And then this is the tendon of that. Alright, moving on to the lateral compartment of the leg. This is the lateral compartment. Again, this is the little toe, so this is the lateral aspect. This here is the lateral malleolus. Now on the lateral side, in the lateral compartment, we only have the two muscles, which are the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis. The peroneus longus being the one which is most superficial, and deep to that you're going to have the peroneus brevis, right? So this is the one, superficial one is the peroneus longus muscle. The tendons of both the peroneus longus and brevis are going to pass posterior to the lateral malleolus, and here the relationship of these two tendons is that anteriorly you're going to have the tendon of the peroneus brevis, right? So this one here, the anterior one, which comes in direct contact with the lateral malleolus, is the peroneus brevis, and this goes and gets inserted into the lateral aspect of the fifth metatarsal bone, and then posterior to that you're going to have the tendon of the peroneus longus. So you can see the anterior is the peroneus brevis, and just behind that the posterior one is the peroneus longus, and peroneus longus then goes and gets it passes all the way across the sole of the foot and then gets inserted into the first metatarsal bone. Alright, now we're going to talk about the posterior compartment. As you can see, this is the posterior compartment. In the posterior compartment, we have a superficial layer of muscles and a deep layer of muscles. The superficial layer of muscles includes the gastrocnemius and the soleus along with the plantaris. The gastrocnemius has two heads. We've done this before when we were doing the popliteal fossa. The two heads being the lateral, this is the lateral one. So the lateral head and the medial head, the two heads of the gastrocnemius, which form the infralateral and inframedial boundaries of the popliteal fossa, right? So these are the two heads of gastrocnemius, and this here is the tendocalcaneus, right? The tendocalcaneus, which is the common insertion of the superficial muscles of the posterior compartment. Now this is the gastrocnemius. Just deep to the gastrocnemius you have the soleus. We haven't separated the soleus here from the gastrocnemius, but as you can see, superficial one is the gastrocnemius, and then deep to that is the soleus. right? So on either side of the gastrocnemius here, deep to that you can see this is the soleus muscle, alright, and they have a common insertion into the tendocalcaneus, which is the long tendon, the largest tendon in the body, which gets inserted into the posterior aspect of the calcaneum here in the foot, alright. So these are the superficial muscles of the posterior compartment. Now moving these aside, we move on to the deep layer. Now the deep layer includes the popliteus. The popliteus of course is going to be here in the floor of the popliteal fossa. Other than that, we have three other muscles, which are the tibialis posterior, the flexor hallucis longus and the flexor digitorum longus. Now all of them are going to be traveling from the medial side. Here, all of the tendons of these deep muscles are going to travel from underneath the flexor retinaculum here and then into the sole of the foot, right? Now you can also see this is the tibial nerve, which is supplying all of the posterior compartment of the leg, including the superficial as well as the deep layer of muscles, and this is the posterior tibial artery, and both these artery and the nerve are also going to travel deep to the flexor retinaculum here and enter the sole of the foot. Alright, now talking about the deep muscles of the posterior compartment of the leg, we have this one here, this one, the one that I am holding with my left hand right now. This is the the flexor digitorum longus muscle, right? So this one here is the flexor digitorum longus, and this is going to be towards the lateral side, right? And on the medial side, this one, it is not very properly separated, but this one towards the medial side is the flexor hallucis longus muscle, right? And in between these two, the deepest of all, which is just right next to the interosseous membrane of the posterior compartment, you have in the center, this one is the tibialis posterior muscle, alright. So this is the flexor digitorum longus, then you have the tibialis posterior, and then you have the flexor hallucis longus, right. The popliteus is going to be obviously proximal here in the floor of the popliteal fossa, and then you have the tibial nerve and the posterior tibial artery, and all the tendons of all of these deep muscles as well as the nerve and vessels, they are going to travel behind the medial malleolus deep to the flexor retinaculum within the tarsal tunnel and then enter the sole of the foot.